My friends, I want to talk to you about the one thing that truly separates the faithful from the faint-hearted: patience. In this modern world of instant communication, instant results, and instant gratification, we have been conditioned to believe that if something doesn't happen now, it must not be meant to happen at all. We check the clock, we check the calendar, and when the answer to our fervent prayer isn't delivered by the deadline we set, anxiety creeps in, followed closely by doubt. I tell you today that anxiety is an enemy of the soul. It is a fundamental error in faith. It is time for us to put down the stopwatch and lift our eyes to the heavens, because the truth is this: you must trust God's perfect timing. It will happen. We serve a Creator who operates on an eternal scale. We measure our lives in days and years. God measures His plan in epochs. When you are waiting for a job, waiting for healing, waiting for a lost loved one to return to the path, or waiting for a massive national prayer to be answered, you must remember that God's wisdom extends far beyond the limited scope of our vision. If the answer had come yesterday, perhaps you would not have learned the lesson of reliance that you needed today. If the blessing had arrived last month, perhaps you would not have developed the character necessary to sustain it tomorrow. God does not withhold His blessings out of scarcity or neglect. He withholds them for a period of time out of profound love and a commitment to your ultimate holistic good. He is working not just on the solution, but He is working on you. The Bible is a testament to this truth. Abraham waited decades for the promise of a son. Moses waited 40 years in the desert before leading his people. Christ Himself waited until the precise appointed moment to fulfill His mission. These were not delays. They were preparations. They were periods of essential forging where doubt was burned away and absolute faith was tempered into steel. So when the silence stretches long and the path ahead seems obscured, do not quit. Do not despair. You are not waiting for an uncertain outcome. You are waiting for a guaranteed appointment. Hold fast to the promise, because the time on God's calendar is perfect. And when His perfect time arrives, the answer will come with a force, a clarity, and a stability that proves it was worth every moment of the wait. It will happen. Have faith, be still, and let His purpose unfold. The first truth we must confront is the pervasive cultural sickness of impatience that has infected our faith. The anxiety over delayed answers is not merely an inconvenience, but a fundamental error in faith, and indeed, an enemy of the soul. We live in a world relentlessly optimized for speed. We expect instant data transfer, instant communication, and instant delivery. This conditioning has polluted our spiritual expectations, leading us to believe that if a prayer is not answered now, if a breakthrough is not instantaneous, then the answer must be no, or perhaps that God does not care. This anxiety stems from a disastrous mistake in calculation. We are applying the finite, rapid clock speed of the human machine to the infinite, timeless reality of the divine. When we check our wristwatch and find that God has not met the deadline we set, doubt, that insidious corrosive agent, immediately seizes the heart. This doubt, fueled by anxiety, is a spiritual bottleneck, actively hindering the very faith required to receive the blessing when it ultimately arrives. Anxiety is the enemy of the soul because it steals our peace and focuses our attention entirely on lack and limitation. It pulls our eyes away from the immense power and wisdom of the Creator and fixes them instead on the small, temporary frustrations of our own unmet schedule. When we are consumed by the "why not now," we miss the profound spiritual work that God is doing in the now, the forging of character, the lesson of reliance, and the quiet movement of circumstances behind the scenes. This error is a failure to recognize the nature of the giver. To demand instant gratification from an eternal God is to treat Him as a vending machine rather than the omniscient architect of time and purpose. It is to imply that our hurried, limited perspective knows better than His boundless, perfect wisdom. The moment we allow anxiety to dictate our response to the delay, we surrender the spiritual high ground and replace trust with temporal frustration. We must understand that true faith is defined not by the boldness of the request, but by the patience of the wait. It is the settled, unwavering conviction that the promise is good, even when the evidence of its arrival is absent. Our task is to perform an immediate system check on this Anxiety, we must flag it as an error code, terminate the process, and consciously choose to replace the internal clock of worry with the external certain calendar of providence. Releasing the anxiety is the first essential step toward aligning our spirit with the divine timing, ensuring that we are ready and receptive for the guaranteed blessing when His perfect time is revealed. Deeply foundational truth we must grasp when faced with periods of waiting is the absolute certainty that God operates on an eternal scale. We are creatures bound by minutes, hours, and years. We measure our lives in days and years, constantly aware of deadlines and the inevitable passage of time. This finite perspective is a necessary part of the human condition, but it becomes a spiritual hindrance when we attempt to project this limited view onto the infinite nature of the Creator. We must recognize that God measures His comprehensive plan in epochs, a timeline that extends far beyond the limited scope of our vision. To trust God's timing, we must first accept that His wisdom is not constrained by our immediate needs or our short-term objectives. Our prayers, while honest and heartfelt, often focus on solving the next 90-day problem. I need this job by Friday. I need this healing by the end of the month. I need this breakthrough before my resources run out. God, however, is simultaneously addressing the 90-year purpose of our soul, the 1,000-year moral trajectory of our nation, and the eternal fulfillment of His promises. When the answer to our fervent prayer is delayed, it is not because God missed our urgent request. It is because His solution is often far larger and more comprehensive than the temporary fix we requested. He is orchestrating a vast network of variables, the timing of other people, the convergence of necessary circumstances, the maturation of our own spiritual readiness. To deliver the answer before the perfect time might solve our immediate crisis, but could inadvertently compromise a greater, more profound blessing intended for our future. The period of waiting forces us to confront this difference in scale. It compels us to move from a consumer mentality, which demands immediate fulfillment, to a covenant mentality, which trusts the long-term, loving promise of the giver. When we fully internalize that we serve a God who exists outside of time, the anxiety that cripples us when our deadline is missed begins to dissolve. We realize that a delay of a year is merely a whisper in the context of eternity, and that the extra time is being used not for inaction, but for the meticulous, perfect alignment of all necessary forces. Therefore, our task is to surrender the narrow lens of our own vision and embrace the panoramic scope of God's plan. We must trust that the same power that organized the cosmos is perfectly capable of organizing the details of our lives. The long silence is not an empty space. It is a profound period of work where God is preparing the stage and preparing us to receive a blessing that will not only solve the immediate problem, but will stand the test of time and advance His eternal purpose. Vital perspective that transforms the burden of waiting into an act of enduring faith is the conviction that delay is preparation, not neglect. We must understand that God does not withhold His blessings, answers, or breakthroughs out of scarcity, oversight, or apathy. He withholds them for a period of time out of profound love and an unwavering commitment to our ultimate holistic good. The delay is not an empty, inactive pause. It is a period of essential work where God is perfecting both the solution and us. When a deadline passes and the expected blessing has not arrived, our anxiety, key point 1, tells us we are forgotten. But the truth is that God's timing is governed by two simultaneous projects. The first project is the external solution. He is orchestrating the perfect convergence of people, circumstances, resources, and global events necessary to deliver the answer in the most stable and impactful way possible. Delivering a major blessing prematurely might expose it to external factors like the instability of an underdeveloped market or the interference of premature political opposition that could compromise its ultimate success. The delay ensures the landing zone is clear and ready. The second, and often more important project, is the internal preparation. God is working on you. He is using the silence and the stretching of the wait to develop the character necessary to sustain the blessing when it arrives. If the abundance we prayed for were delivered today, without the wisdom and humility forged by the wait, we might misuse it, waste it, or allow it to become a source of spiritual pride and eventual downfall. The delay ensures that the vessel is strong enough to hold the gift. This period of waiting is an essential forging process. Doubt is challenged, selfishness is exposed, and self-reliance is broken down, forcing us to lean wholly on the eternal scale of God's power. Key point 2. Moses did not lead the Israelites immediately after his moment of passion. He spent 40 years in the desert shedding his Egyptian identity and developing the patience and humility required to shepherd a nation. Joseph did not jump from the pit to the palace. He endured slavery and unjust imprisonment, forging the wisdom and administrative skill necessary to eventually manage an empire. These biblical periods were not delays in God's plan, they were preparations. They were periods of essential tempering where temporary comfort was sacrificed for eternal character. Therefore, when you find yourself in a protracted season of waiting, whether for health, career, or reconciliation, do not see it as abandonment. See it as a divine investment. Trust that God is utilizing this time to refine your patience, strengthen your reliance, and develop the profound character that will make you a worthy, capable steward of the blessing when it arrives with the perfect force and stability it was intended to have. Non-negotiable lesson that the period of waiting imparts is that this time is explicitly designed to develop the necessary character. We often pray for the outcome, the job, the healing, the restored relationship. But God, in His perfect wisdom and profound love, key point 3, is far more concerned with the person we become while we wait. The delay is not a test of your patience alone. It is a meticulous forging process intended to ensure that you are fully equipped, spiritually and emotionally, to steward the blessing when it finally manifests. If the answer had arrived immediately on the timeline dictated by your anxiety, key point 1, you would have missed the opportunity to develop the very qualities essential for sustaining that answer. For instance, receiving immense wealth without the prior development of humility and discipline often leads to ruin. Achieving a position of great influence without first developing deep empathy and reliance on divine guidance often leads to arrogance and ethical failure. The waiting time is the curriculum that ensures the vessel is capable of holding the gift. This period actively works to build 4 crucial character traits. Reliance, the absence of immediate answers forces you to the end of your own resources. You must learn to rely not on your checking account, your network, or your own limited strength, but entirely on the faithfulness of God's eternal scale. This dependence breaks the corrosive spiritual pride of self-sufficiency. Patience, endurance. True biblical patience is not passive resignation. It is active, steadfast endurance under trial. The delay stretches your capacity to remain hopeful and morally upright when the evidence for hope is scarce. This develops spiritual muscle that will serve you in every future crisis. Humility, the humbling experience of having to wait, of having to submit your will to a timing you cannot control, erodes the arrogance that often accompanies human success. Humility prepares you to receive the blessing with gratitude, recognizing it as an unmerited gift, not an earned reward. Clarity of purpose. The quiet time of waiting often clarifies your original desire. You move from wanting a blessing for superficial reasons to desiring it for reasons that truly align with God's will. The wait allows the trivial requests to fall away, leaving behind the core, righteous yearning. The periods of silence are therefore a classroom where God is providing essential personalized training. When the answer arrives, it will come with a force and stability that proves it was worth the wait. Key point 6. But only because you, the recipient, were prepared through the intentional delay to handle its weight and utilize it for eternal purposes. Embrace the forge. The character being developed is your greatest asset. Fundamental truth that sustains faith during long periods of waiting is the assurance that we are not waiting for an uncertain future or a speculative hope. We are waiting for a guaranteed appointment. This perspective moves the waiting process from anxious uncertainty to hopeful anticipation, because the promise made by God is not tentative. It is perfectly timed on his eternal calendar. Key point 2. The anxiety that plagues us, key point 1, often treats the promise as if it were a fragile human contract that could be broken by circumstances or forgotten by the other party. But the history of faith confirms that God's promises are guaranteed by his unchanging righteous character. Every promise he has ever made, whether to individuals like Abraham, nations like Israel, or to humanity through the ultimate sacrifice, has been fulfilled at the precise appointed moment. The delay, key point 3, is never an indicator of uncertainty. It is a signature of certainty, ensuring the perfection of the fulfillment. When you are waiting for the healing, for the reconciliation, for the professional breakthrough, you are not waiting for a maybe. You are waiting for an inevitable occurrence that is already scheduled. The question is not if it will happen, but when it will happen, and how prepared you will be. Key point 4, when that moment arrives. This shifts your focus entirely from the anxiety of the unknown to the active patience of preparation. The biblical narratives are filled with examples of this guaranteed appointment. Abraham had to wait decades for the promised son, Isaac, but the timing of Isaac's birth was not random. It was the exact moment required to prove God's power and to establish the lineage for the Messiah. The Exodus did not happen the day the Israelites prayed for it, but at the appointed time when Pharaoh's hardness of heart and Moses' readiness converged. Even Christ's death and resurrection occurred not a day too soon or a moment too late, but in the fullness of time, the moment perfectly orchestrated to maximize its spiritual and historical impact. This knowledge compels us to hold fast to the promise, treating the delay not as a sign of resistance, but as a countdown to the guaranteed event. Your perseverance through this period is an act of spiritual fidelity, confirming your absolute trust in the certainty of God's timing over the chaos of man's schedule. By embracing this truth, you replace the corrosive doubt of, "I wonder if," with the resolute confidence of, "I know that," allowing you to rest in the unwavering assurance that the appointed hour for your blessing is rapidly approaching. The sixth and culminating truth that provides the ultimate rest for the waiting soul is the guarantee that when God's perfect time arrives, the answer will come with a force, clarity, and stability that proves the wait was worthwhile and confirms the promise it will happen. This is the final, undeniable validation of faith, demonstrating that the delay, key point 3, was not an arbitrary stretching of patience, but a meticulous engineering of circumstances designed for maximum impact. When the blessing arrives in God's appointed moment, key point 5, its manifestation will possess a force that overcomes all lingering resistance. The obstacles that seemed insurmountable during the waiting period, the financial barriers, the relational walls, the medical impossibilities, will suddenly crumble. The breakthrough will be so definitive, so comprehensive, and so undeniable that it will leave no room for doubt about its divine origin. This power is the signature of God's eternal scale, key point 2, operating in the temporal world, moving mountains that human effort alone could not touch. Furthermore, the answer will possess profound clarity. During the waiting period, confusion and ambiguity often reign, feeding the anxiety of the soul, key point 1. But when the time is right, the path forward will suddenly become illuminated. The right person will appear, the necessary resource will be released, or the perfect opportunity will align. This clarity will serve as a guiding light, confirming that the solution is not a random occurrence, but a precisely executed component of God's overarching plan, eliminating the need for further frantic searching or second-guessing. Most critically, the blessing will possess stability because God used the period of waiting to develop the necessary character within you, key point 4, and to align all the external variables. The fulfillment will be built on rock. It will not be a fleeting success that quickly disappears, but an enduring foundation upon which you can build a righteous, sustained life. The character forged in the wait ensures you are a wise and humble steward of the gift, and the perfect timing ensures the external circumstances are robust enough to support it indefinitely. This ultimate reward transforms the hardship of the delay. The pain of the waiting, the periods of loneliness, and the struggle against anxiety are instantly reframed as a small price paid for an immeasurable, guaranteed return. The finality and the perfection of the answered prayer, its force, its clarity, and its stability serve as a powerful, permanent witness to the faithfulness of God. This knowledge allows us to endure today with joy, knowing that every moment of patient trust is an investment in a guaranteed future where the promise is fulfilled and the worth of the wait is gloriously proven.